And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace. No Todd Erzen today. He's got a travel day. There you see the empty chair. He's got a travel day from college move-in weekend. He will return on tomorrow's program. Of course, Aaron McIntyre is here. Otherwise, I would not be permitted to be. And we are brought to you by our friends over at Trust and Will. You know, to get the most out of life, you always have to try to be prepared. A lot of us don't realize that a will doesn't necessarily cover everything when it comes to estate planning. Trust and Will can help ensure that your loved ones are covered when it comes to things like medical decisions and power of attorney. Go to trustandwill.com/Deace to get 20% off their simple, secure, and expert-backed estate planning services. That's trust and the word and, trustandwill.com. It's who we have used now for the last few years for our estate planning. We gave it a shot before we recommended it to you, because sometimes, with these kinds of, national websites, it's really cookie cutter. Can you really customize it to your particular situation? With Trust and Will, we marveled at how customizable it was, how easy it was to use as well. All right, so they can help you take charge of protecting your family's future as much as possible. And remember that all your information and documents are going to be securely stored with bank-level encryption. All right. Each will or trust is state-specific, legally valid, and customized to your needs. So go to trustandwill.com/Deace for 20% off right now. That's trustandwill.com/Deace for 20% off. And I also want to let you know, if you're a subscriber, we have a brand new feature starting up this weekend here on Blaze TV. It is called Sunday Revival. And we are committed to restoring, preserving, maintaining American greatness. And of course, if you want to know why America was great at the beginning, it was the goodness that was preached from her pulpits. So you're going to hear messages from outstanding pastors across the country. Jack Graham from Prestonwood Baptist, Alan Jackson over at World Outreach Church in Nashville, Josh Howerton at Lake Point, Rob McCoy from Godspeak Calvary Chapel, where I spoke a couple of years ago for our film Nefarious, and many more. Join us each week and discover additional perspectives to help deepen your understanding and your faith. Regardless of what's happening in our chaotic world, Sunday Revival is here to help you grow, stay grounded in God's Word, and continue to strengthen your faith. You can join us this Sunday on Blaze TV and start your week with purpose, faith, and inspiration. It's called Sunday Revival right here on Blaze TV. I think this is a tremendous idea, Aaron. Tremendous idea.
Indeed, and it's not just complementarian to the rest of our programming. I think in many ways it needs to be, this type of stuff needs to be foundational to the rest of our lineup, and I think in many cases it already is, but we're just formalizing that with what sounds like to be a great lineup of teaching and preaching.
All right, speaking of great lineups, coming up later this hour, Bob Vander Plaats is going to join us, going to get his reaction to a video that went viral over the weekend. We'll be showing that to you. Next hour, we're going to do Ask Me Anything, a way that we have never done it before. I'm actually going to suggest or select the questions, since Todd is gone and I didn't want to give Aaron one more thing to do. So I'm going to select the questions, and I'm going to do it live here on the air. I have not seen any of the questions at all, and I'm going to select the ones that we're going to answer live on the air. I'll get through as many of them as I can, and then we'll get through a few more in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers. If you want to make sure you don't miss that and all of our other great programming here at Blaze TV, go to blazetv.com/Deace. Get a reduced subscription with my promo code Deace right now, blazetv.com/Deace, promo code Deace. And then we're going to end the show with the return of a guy whose interview last year, man, just rocked my world. Daniel Davidson wrote a book a year ago. He's over at the Federalist. And he wrote a book a year ago called Pagan America. And, we've been talking about revival or bust on this show for I don't know how many years now. Well, what does bust look like? And the whole theorem of John's book is that America would not go bust in the traditional sense, as in assume the position on the ash heap of history, but it would just become evil, like what we're seeing happen in Western Europe, for example. So after this last election now, half a year plus in, how does John think we are doing in trying to thwart that trend line? We're going to talk to John about that coming up in the final segment of the show you don't want to miss. But you also don't want to miss Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by On the Cusp. It appears we could be on the cusp of a major breakthrough when it comes to the conflict in Ukraine. On the heels of the historic meeting in Alaska between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, another meeting is taking place today at the White House, featuring Trump, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and a few others. On the way back from his meeting with Putin, Trump said this meeting was great, and if everything works out with today's meeting, another meeting with Putin could be scheduled soon. Secretary of State Marco Rubio went through the car wash of Sunday morning news shows and said when it comes to Putin, the only way out is through.
The red carpet, the warm handshake, that President Trump simply lost that Putin gained there just by being on the world stage and walking down a red carpet with the president. Your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, critics of President Trump are always going to find something to criticize. You don't even pay attention to it anymore. But I will tell you this, Putin is already on the world stage. He's already on the world stage. The guy's conducting a full-scale war in Ukraine. He's already on the world stage. He has the world's largest tactical nuclear arsenal in the world and the second largest strategic nuclear arsenal in the world. He's already on the world stage. When I hear people say that, oh, it elevates him, well, all we do is talk about Putin all the time. All the media's done is talk about Putin all the time for the last 4 or 5 years. That doesn't mean he's right about the war. That doesn't mean he's justified about the war. Put all that aside. It means you're not going to have a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. You're not going to end a war between Russia and Ukraine without dealing with Putin.
Oh, by the way, while all this is going on, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham is reportedly teaming up with Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal to designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. Moving on, this video went viral over the weekend showing a driver of an 18-wheeler tractor trailer making an illegal U-turn at highway speeds on the Florida Turnpike just last week. As the driver made the illegal U-turn, a minivan smashed into the trailer, obliterating it and killing 3 people in the van. For those of you listening, the driver of the truck, wearing a turban, possesses a facial expression of slight annoyance both during and after the incident. The driver was later identified as 35-year-old Harjinder Singh, an Indian national who crossed the U.S. southern border illegally in California back in 2018, was granted a commercial driver's license by California Governor Gavin Newsom's Department of Motor Vehicles. Since 2018, Singh has enjoyed a bureaucratic black hole of procedure and paperwork after he was given deportation orders back during the first Trump administration, but claimed he feared for his life back in India. Singh has been charged with 3 counts of vehicular homicide and has an ICE detainer. Checking in on Cairo, Egypt over the weekend. Just kidding, that's Dearborn, Michigan over the weekend at a Shia Muslim rally featuring around 40,000 attendees. Learning the dark tongue of Mordor today. Today's phrase is, how's that Constitution doing, America? Back to Trump, who posted this on Truth Social this morning, saying he's planning on leading a movement to ban mail-in voting and voting machines. He said in part, quote, Democrats are virtually unelectable without using this completely disproven mail-in scam. Elections can never be honest with mail-in ballots and voting, and everybody, in particular the Democrats, knows this. Texas Republicans have reissued arrest warrants for absconding Democrat members who apparently changed their minds and decided not to show up for a special session last week. The title of this movie is Arrest Warrant 2, Warrant Harder. Reports indicate Democrats are expected to actually, for real this time, show up today. In New York, Governor Kathy Hochul has pardoned 13 illegal aliens to shield them from ICE deportation, including a guy from Laos who murdered a man in 1988 in Brooklyn and was convicted in 1990. In South Carolina, married father of 4, attorney and Democrat gubernatorial candidate William Mullins McLeod is facing calls from his own party to step down from the gubernatorial race he only entered just last week after video emerged of his bizarre arrest back in May.
And Alan, you dumb I know you're not good. You do stupid.
Later on in that video, that Democrat candidate for South Carolina governor can be heard calling himself God and making other bizarre statements. According to a police report, McLeod was arrested late at night in Charleston one day back in May and showed signs consistent with use of stimulants. And finally, new this morning, MSNBC is rebranding. It's no longer going to be called MSNBC. Instead, it's MS Now, which stands for My Source, News, Opinion, World. Check out that logo. Definitely a rebrand. And that's what happened while we were away.
You know, a lot, Aaron, can happen in a quarter century. There was a time that Alan Keyes had a show, his own show on MSNBC.
I don't believe you.
Pat Buchanan was a formal contributor.
You're making this up.
And I was actually being auditioned to replace him.
All lies.
And did about 36 or so, maybe a few more, various appearances on numerous shows on that network. That's all happened in the 21st century thus far. A lot can happen in just a quarter century on one network.
I just want to say, one of the most recognizable logos in the world, the peacock. Mm-hmm. And you're just ditching that? Kind of seems to me like maybe you should put a little bit more thought into that. Having your name attached with that peacock seems to have been a little bit beneficial, but maybe not.
I don't know what MS Now means. We're going to lunatic fringe even faster. It's more immediate. It's more imminent. I guess we'll see what happens. Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Birch Gold. The continued divide between President Trump and the Federal Reserve trying to tank his economy. Manage the interest rates. Means there's going to be continued disruption happening here with your particular investment portfolio. And for decades, gold has been viewed as a safe haven in times of economic stagnation, global uncertainty, and high inflation. Birch Gold wants to make it incredibly easy for you to diversify some of your savings into gold. If you have an IRA or old 401k, you can convert it into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or just buy some gold to keep in your safe. So first, though, get educated. No obligation, just information. All right, they're going to send you a free info kit on gold if you text my name, Steve, to the number 989898. Text my name, Steve, to the number 989898 for your free info kit on gold. Text Steve to 989898 and our friends over at Birch Gold Group. All right, Aaron, let's get to your montage and let us begin with the latest maneuverings happening in Ukraine. And I just have to say, Martha Raddatz, who is the journalist, asking about rolling out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin. Maybe, I'm guessing a lot of you don't remember this, even know her name. And because you don't consume virtually anything she does, are likely unaware. But I believe it was when, in Trump's first term, Aaron, with, was it Soleimani? The member of the Iranian...
oh, yes, the austere religious scholar.
Yes, Republican Guard, I think was the one Trump eliminated. Somebody like that, yeah. She showed up at his state funeral in Iran wearing a head covering on the air, broadcasting back to America. And now she is concerned, of course, about being seen feting and slurping and genuflecting to America's enemies. Get the you-know-what out of here with that. Feminist woman put on a head covering to broadcast from Tehran and now has thoughts on being seen as schlepping for the opposition. Now, of course, I don't even know who the opposition in this war even is. I'm not even being flippant. I genuinely do not know. Notice the whole talking point that they were giving us in the aftermath of the original Russian invasion. Well, we have to stop him or he's going to rebuild the Soviet Union. It's been 3.5 years and my man over there can't even subdue Kiev.
We'll take Donetsk.
Yes.
We'll settle for that.
Yes. Notice they don't repeat that anymore. They don't even have reasons for why to continue this anymore. You know why? There aren't any reasons to continue this anymore. I have been right about this all along. This is a Habsburg dynasty, World War I era urination match between rival groups of elites who all hate you and your way of life. One of these groups is actually more of a direct threat to you than the other. And even though I'm not a huge fan of his shtick, I'm not talking about Putin. It's the other group. Putin didn't tell you couldn't go anywhere in the West if you didn't take a jab and be a human experiment for corporations you can't then sue when they maybe kill you or someone you love. The Western elites did. All those folks sitting there with Zelensky this morning, they're the ones who did all this. They're the ones who created vax passes, like proto versions of the mark of the beast. They did this. I mean, our own Western elites are the personification. It's funny, I was texting with a new friend of mine, John Harris, this morning. And we were talking about where we are as a civilization. And I have to give John credit. I can't tell you how many texts I receive on a regular basis and from how many people around the country. And John is the first person, Aaron, I have ever encountered in my entire texting lifetime who began a conversation invoking the anti-federalist. I have to give him credit for that. That is a deep pull, a deep cut, a deep track, respect. And I responded back to him, well, it took about 200 years, but the anti-federalists proved to be right about virtually everything. And if you know what we're talking about, we'll probably do a show on that sometime in the not too distant future, maybe. But there's a great line in Mel Gibson's The Patriot. And he would be out of probably what would be considered the anti-federalist camp. And he says, why would I trade one tyrant 2,000 miles away for 2,000 tyrants 1 mile away? That's kind of where we are now. Our founding fathers had way more in common with King George III than anybody within the sound of my voice has to Brussels and Davos. And that's before we even get to Moscow or Tehran. Way more in common. And so the whole goal of this war from the very beginning, what's Todd call it, reverse Wakanda? What is happening in this country that it is so value? $180 billion our Defense Department has spent on aid to Ukraine prior to Trump's inaugural. $180 billion. The entire rare earth mineral market in the world is currently globally capped at less than $20 billion. That's 1,100% more. Not just in the rare earth minerals we think are in Ukraine, on this planet. On this planet. That we know of anyway. What about this country was worth all of this? And the only thing you can come to, if you've got a fight between George Soros, because that's essentially who Zelensky is. Ukraine is George Soros's playground. Zelensky is one of his puppets. He's the puppeteer. And then you combine Soros and all these World Economic Forum countries with Vladimir Putin. I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to guess. If these two groups of people are at odds over something, it's probably nefarious. Fair? I think it's probably nefarious. Basically, I mean, which of the 5 crime families of in New York City are in a turf war right now? You know what happens when the crime families in New York are in a turf war? You don't choose a side. You get the hell out of the way. That's what happens. I have no idea who the good guy here is. I haven't really known from the very beginning who it is. I have no idea what our own interest is, in my opinion. I appreciate the president has gotten it to this juncture, this close to some kind of an end, maybe, but I don't even know if it's worth the energy he's already spent on it. And certainly, it's funny. Zelensky tells us, Aaron, that Ukraine has a constitution that says they can't trade away their land, but they can suspend elections. Cool constitution, brah. We can suspend elections in Ukraine, but we can't trade any land. Funny how that works. See, the whole goal of this from the beginning was just to extend this war so that the United States, so that your sons and daughters, my son-in-law and maybe my son, had to go over there and die for Brussels and Davos. That was the goal, to put boots on the ground there. For whatever is going on within that country, whoever's money laundering scheme is at stake there. Apparently, Ukraine is the Straits of Hormuz of Western thugocracy, kleptocracies, money laundering schemes. So whoever's money laundering route was in danger there. Our sons had to go die for that. And the goal was just to prolong this to the point that it was clear the only way that this was going to be stopped was to put American boots on the ground. That was clearly the point of this from the beginning. That's been the entire strategy. And I think the point needs to be patently made clear to Vladimir Zelensky here today. This is the deal. Take it or leave it. You're never dragging us in. Take another shot at me in an open field. I've got assassination insurance now named J.D. Vance. You're never dragging us into this. You're never getting into NATO, which would then drag us into this. It's never happening. So you can give up the regions that already voted to join Russia and still have a rather large landmass on a globe that says Ukraine on it, or good luck. We've got enough of our own problems to fix. Aaron, your thoughts on that level of diplomacy?
When it comes to Russia, you know, I don't know if you saw these videos of Putin actually paying homage or tribute to some of the fallen Soviet soldiers who are buried by that land lease program that we had back in the yesteryears. You know, I see things like that. I'm like, oh, wow, there's actually a human there. And then another part of my brain kicks in and said, no, this is a former KGB operative. This is all just propaganda. And then the other side of my brain kicks in and say, well, is that only my reaction because I've been propagandized one way or another? What I do know is that for my entire life, Russia has been either pariah adjacent or right now they are pariah status. So let's try another way. Let's just treat them like Marco Rubio said, I thought what he laid out there to Martha
Rubio's messaging has been incredible.
Was just a very realist perspective.
Yep.
The only way out of this conflict is through Putin and not necessarily in the warmongering type of way. You just got to deal with him. That's a very realist policy. So instead of treating him like pariah adjacent or an actual pariah, which is what the world has done so far outside of Russia's sphere of influence, let's actually bring him in face to face. Face to face actually matters, I believe. And let's see what happens. Let's see what we can get accomplished. And I think at the end of the day, I don't know if you saw some of the early video coming out of the White House of Zelensky. Did you see his get up today, Steve?
Yeah, black sweater.
Old t-shirt.
Yeah, it was a t-shirt. A t-shirt. Yeah.
So if that is foreshadowing of things to come, I am not optimistic about the results of this meeting today. I will say something. I'm not the lefties who are, well, things went terribly. That's why Emmanuel Macron and Giorgia Meloni and all these people, there's no other reason why they would get on a plane to D.C. in short order other than everything went to hell in Alaska. I don't believe that. I just think that something has changed for the better, maybe an opening to end this war. But I do believe Rubio said later on that if it doesn't happen now, it's going to be at least another year and a half. And the killing is just going to keep going. So I really think the ball is in Zelensky's court here. Whether or not those European leaders are there to pressure him or pressure him one way or another, I don't know. All I know is that the way that we've been doing diplomacy with Russia has been one way. It seems like we're trying another way. Let's let it play out.
Amen. Amen to that. Thought that was all very well said. And you're right. Thank you for singling out Rubio's messaging because it has been absolutely on target. Immigration. You know, I found it fascinating that your snark translator for today's montage, after these two stories of what's going on this weekend in I almost said Cairo myself, Dearborn, Michigan, double Freudian slip, and that illegal alien who jackknifed somebody's family in a minivan. It's funny that you said that you invoked the Constitution there. And we're going to get into this more tomorrow. Let me give you a little tease. There's a big debate happening on the American right. It's simmering now. It's largely been within some social media circles, but it's growing. And because of stories like this, it's going to continue to grow. And that debate really comes down to, does the Constitution, is it still an effective means of maintaining order and preserving our way of life, given where we are? And this will be a conversation, I think, that we're going to be entering into. And I know by even entering into it, atheists who somehow have been self-appointed as the sheriff of Nottingham of the American right by people I don't know nor care about will start labeling me woke right. I don't even know what that even means. Right? At least once a week, one of you guys will send me an email asking me, will you guys wade into this? We actually looked into it. All three of us did as a show. And frankly, we have no idea what the term even means. We really don't. It just seems to be I'm sure there are some people that use it that really have a meaning behind it, but by and large, it is a catch-all for how dare you demand we confront the spirit of the age. That doesn't mean we should. I agree with everything that everybody that is lumped into that says. I did an event earlier this year in Temple, Texas. An entire room of people that have been lumped into that label, and I disagreed with several of them. But your labels aren't going to stop me from having a conversation, because I'm a man, okay? I'm a guy. I'm not a child. I'm not some fitness influencer with 24-inch biceps who had to shut down his TikTok account because I wear flannels year-round on TikTok, said nasty things about me and called me a racist. Nor does an atheist ever get appointed sheriff of Nottingham, chief of referees and officials over what believers do and do not get to discuss in public, nor are they any form of gatekeeper whatsoever. So I don't care how many times I get subtexted or tweeted by James Lindsay, whom I don't even know. I don't care. What I do care about is preserving our way of life. And I do think we have to ask ourselves, at the very least, Aaron, if the current understanding of the Constitution permits what occurred in Dearborn, Michigan over the weekend, at the very least, I think we have to completely reevaluate our interpretation of said Constitution. Because that just would not have happened by the people who actually wrote those words and ratified that thing. You think they would have permitted some massive demonstration after the Brits burned down the White House, a massive demonstration in support of returning to England? Hell to the no. They would not have. So if your understanding of the Constitution is we have to permit invasion and then subjugation on top of that, then you can call me whatever the Sam Hill you want. I'll call you what you are, a loser. And you are aiding and abetting the loss of the greatest civilization that's existed on this earth since Genesis 3. If that's the translation of this, Aaron, I do think it's time to have a conversation about some things.
Yes, and my understanding is we will explore this more in depth tomorrow, in some ways. But I'll just say I believe our Constitution doesn't allow things like this. I just think it's being interpreted very poorly in the last generation. I don't believe that our Constitution was designed to allow 40,000 Muslims into this country legally, take over the streets of a city legally. Our Constitution was not designed to have an invading force, an invading ideology come, put down roots, take over an entire city, just as long as they had the proper permits and paperwork to do it. Correct. I don't believe that our Constitution was designed for that. I also don't believe that our Constitution allows for just anybody to cross the nation's borders, claim that they're in fear of their life in their old country, and okay, well, you'll just, hopefully you'll just get lost in the system. Here's some bureaucratic black holes for you. Good luck. Have a happy CDL. Mm-hmm. That's not going to work. Yet there are people, even on the right, who will insist, hey, as long as they're playing by the rules that we've established here, nothing's wrong with that. Here's what we need to understand when it comes particularly to Islam. Their eschatology. They are living out their eschatology in real time. It is a religion of domination and conquest, and they will take whatever means necessary to rout any culture in any country.
Preach.
And so if they see softness, they're going to exploit that softness. And boy, howdy, do they see a lot of softness in the United States. And that's how you get a 40,000 plus rally on the streets of Dearborn, a Shia rally. We have to, in the United States, delineate between Shia and Shiite. Sunni and Shia. It should have never happened.
Correct.
But here we are.
100%. Can't say it any better than you did right there. By the way, our country was founded by men who didn't think we had to follow rules when the rules clearly no longer followed what was right and wrong. Otherwise, we're not here today. So that's not an argument. It's time for us to enter into this conversation. but to do so with a biblical worldview at the same time. All right, we're going to come back. Bob Vander Plaats is going to join us. There's a video over surrogacy that went viral over the weekend. Going to get his and your reaction to it next. Hey, folks. Obviously, if you're tuned in here to The Blaze, you know that children are a gift from God, and every day, thousands of women across our country are considering murdering their own children. Right now, nearly 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in abortion, particularly with that abortion pill that turns every potential mailbox into an abortion mill. That's over 3,000 lives lost every single day. But through Preborn, they have helped save over 357,000 babies throughout the course of their life-giving work. Just this year alone, Preborn estimates, with the support and generosity of our audience here at The Blaze, over 37,000 babies have been saved. It doubles the chance at a baby's life. When mom is confronted, it's gentle. The method is gentle, but it's a confrontation nevertheless. She is considering the murder of her child. They confront her gently, but they confront her nevertheless with that heartbeat, with that ultrasound that costs just $28 for just one of them. And I would argue maybe even doubles the chance at the mom's eternal life, because I do think something unique happens to you. And the hardening of your heart in too many cases when you commit this grievous sin. And we've seen that. We are watching women who just want to kill their own children become a potent political force in America. And so this is, again, why we want to partner with Preborn. You can make a tax-deductible donation today. And truly, you're doing the Lord's work at preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. Let's rescue a generation, one heartbeat at a time. You can also dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby on your mobile phone, pound 250 keyword baby on your mobile phone at preborn.com/Steve. Welcome in our good friend Bob Vander Plaats, sitting there in Todd Erzin's seat. Brother, how are you?
I'm feeling powerful, or maybe just insightful being in Todd's seat. I'm doing really good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and except for the video that we're about to show you.
Yeah.
Okay. This video went viral over the weekend pertaining to the topic of surrogacy. Watch this.
Quick recap, we're having 2 babies. We bought 40 frozen eggs from our egg donor. 28 of those eggs survived the thawing process and then were fertilized. 12 of those fertilized eggs did not develop into usable embryos. So that makes 16 embryos that were sent to PGT testing. And we just got in those PGT testing results. Starting with Joshua's side, his one embryo that was rated good to average came back as chaotic, which checks out. That one is no longer usable. This one, which was originally graded good, came back aneuploid. Chromosome 13 only had 1 in the pair. On my side, the one that was originally graded as bad indeed came back aneuploid. Its chromosome 13 also only had 1 in the pair. This one, which was originally graded as good, came back with no DNA detected, so that's no longer usable. This one, too, which was also originally graded as good, came back aneuploid. Chromosome number 4 only had 1 in the pair. Lastly, this one, which was originally graded good to average, came back as high mosaic. Chromosome number 2 had 3 when it was supposed to have 2. All in all, we're so happy that we decided to purchase as many frozen eggs as we could, 40, because that leaves us with these 10 embryos for 2 babies. And we're told that the majority of journeys take 2 to 3 transfers to get pregnant. We've decided which embryo on both sides that we want to transfer to our 2 surrogates. We'll keep you updated as we do the transfers and as we find out whether or not we're pregnant, and continue to be transparent of how many transfers it takes. But we're not going to share the sex of both babies until we're officially pregnant, just like any other expecting parents would. Thanks for following along, and we're excited to keep you updated.
So that's a homosexual man talking in depth, in detail, about essentially trying to manufacture a human life on an open market with him and his gay lover. And this video went everywhere. It was viral everywhere on social media over the weekend. I just want your instant reaction, Bob, without any of my additional commentary first.
Well, when you initially sent it to me, so take a look at this, and I want to discuss on the show, my 2 words back to you are still the 2 words I have: pure evil. And I think it's ironic, Steve, that you do a lead into your show with an advertisement for preborn baby and how we save a baby's life with ultrasounds and everything else with technology and talking to the
with a mom who's not anywhere in this video, by the way.
With a mom, and then how we've reduced human life to frozen embryos and on a sticky note, and this sticky note is you're discarded or you live.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have, so when I take a look at this, I think, first of all, it is so far away from God's created order. Two guys trying to say, as we become pregnant, everybody knows you can't become pregnant. That's why you got surrogates in the process. You purchase 40 of these embryos, and now you get to go through your own calculation to try to find out what is the perfect child for you to raise when you are denying them the access to a real mom and a mom's input in raising a child. But you're going to discard then 39 other lives. This to me is why God would say, you know, guys, I'm probably just going to turn my back on you guys. There's judgment coming if we're going to do this. You're playing God. So the other thing that hit me, Steve, is the scriptures, John 10:10. The thief comes to rob, kill, steal, and destroy. To me, that's what I saw. I've come to rob marriage. I've come to kill babies, destroy even the basic identity of human life, where Jesus says, I've come to give life and to give it abundantly now.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, there's such a contrast. Quite frankly, I feel sorry for this guy and for his gay lover, because obviously they are trapped.
There's a writer out there named Katie Faust. Have you heard of her?
I have heard of Katie.
In fact, she'd be a good get for you for next year's leadership summit.
You know, Katie and I spoke at the same thing in Pennsylvania. It would have been last October. And I talked to her about our leadership summit. She wanted to come to this year's summit. You're right. She would be a great get.
The premise of a lot of her writing, and in many respects, she is quantifying, you know, when our state became ground zero for the marriage debate, and we pointed out all of these various slippery slope arguments, things like, well, what happens, can two guys, if they're father and son, okay, and, you know, the father's in his 50s and the son is in his 20s or 30s, why can't they get married then? Because they can't conceive a child, right? So so the typical concerns of genetics with inbreeding at that level are not on the table. So these are all the various things we pointed out during those debates that were clear openings and fallacies to point out the entire fallacy of what they were arguing on behalf of. And her argument really is that Obergefell is the genesis of all of this. These kinds of videos we see, Dylan Mulvaney's, everything else, that Obergefell is the genesis of it. And Katie points out the central core of her premise, the best that I can understand it, is that since Obergefell, the paradigm of child rearing and procreation has completely flipped, okay? And in the past, what happened for thousands of years, essentially, of human existence, is that children and their priorities were put ahead of the adults. And now what we have is that the children are an asset to be acquired. Children serve at the leisure of the adults, or even are allowed to live at the leisure of the adults. And I would argue that Katie's premise could even be extended to COVID, where we told the young generation, instead of just secluding the elderly and the infirmed and the vulnerable, your way of life has to go on hold indefinitely, may never come back. No, you'll never have a graduation. You'll never have a prom.
No state tournament, no national tournament.
All the rites of passage that every previous generation got to take for granted, even when we were in wartime, we still did these things. You don't get to do these things. We may never get to do them again because we couldn't possibly just take the elderly and infirmed and isolate them, since they're the people that are the most vulnerable. Instead, the young and the healthy have to suffer. This entire paradigm has flipped, is her argument. And she says that a lot of this goes back to Obergefell, because it uprooted what is the true and ultimate meaning of marriage, and why the state has an interest in the institution and preserving it in the first place.
Without question. And she couldn't be more right. Matter of fact, I think her book, the title of her book, to give her a shout out, is Them Before Us,
correct,
meaning the kids before us. And we have completely, you watch this video, it is us, whoever these two guys are, I forget their names, but these two guys, it is us before them. And so what they've done is, with these sticky notes, is basically going to a new car dealership. Well, what model do you want? You know, do you want 4 doors? Do you want 2 doors? Do you want stick shift? Do you want automatic? You want a tilt wheel? You want a panoramic sunroof? What do you want? But let's keep discarding this until we get the one that we want. Why? Because that child is there to serve us. These two surrogate moms
to
are
complete
there
us, to fulfill us,
to completely usurp this deal. And that's why I believe, Steve, the more crazy this goes, and I believe this is crazy, I think a generation ago, people watch this, they go, that is flat out crazy. That would never happen.
We
That's
probably
some
can't say on the
sci-fi.
air what people a generation ago would have said to things like that.
Exactly. But now today it's the norm. Matter of fact, I was disembarking a plane back in Chicago, and I see two guys with two kids. It only reminds me of this video. And I was just like, I'm not going to say anything, but it's just wrong. Just wrong what you guys are doing to these two children, because it's completely you two and your feelings and your love saturation for one another, for whatever it is that you have. And now you're going to inflict it on these two kids. Mm-hmm. And so to me, I think Katie's exactly right. I really do believe, I've said this frequently, especially back in Naples, Florida, last winter, I said, this is the first time in a long time where I believe we could see the restoration of biblical marriage, one man and one woman, and hopefully for a lifetime with Christ at the center. And the reason is because what Katie has pointed out, what you're pointing out, what we've tried to point out for a long time, you take the parameters of marriage off, God's design for marriage, and let the human mind just wonder. You'll be amazed at what they will conceive, no pun intended, what they will conceive to be the next generation of marriage. And we're seeing it right now. Why we can't know what restroom to use, what sport we should be involved in. And now look at this, about you reduce life to sticky notes. And I believe the reason this video went viral, Steve, I believe there's still a lot of good common sense, God-fearing Americans out there going, this is absolutely nuts of what we're doing.
So there's a reason why this stuff has attached itself to the homosexual movement in America. And I think one of the arguments that we're going to have at the time of Lawrence v. Texas in 2003, we cannot, that was the gateway drug to this, when sodomy law, there were only a few states left that even had sodomy laws. And that was used to strike them down. We can't verify that anybody was actually in prison anywhere for violating sodomy laws.
Right.
At the time of Windsor and Obergefell, there were already homosexuals going to things like Unitarian and Episcopal churches for quote unquote marriages, right? Okay. They just weren't recognized by the state as law in most places in America. But no one was, if you went to a Unitarian church or an Episcopal church in Alabama or any of these Bible Belt states and got quote unquote married there as a homosexual, there was nobody sitting in prison for acting on their heterodoxy. Okay. So it wasn't like there was some threat against some warped view of civil rights as to why we had to redefine all of this. The reason we had to redefine all of this is so we could do exactly what is being done right now. That's why it all had to be redefined. And that's the truth. This was all, the intent was to get us to the place that we are right now because of the spirit of the age that is behind all of this. And what we're going to have to figure out on the right, Bob, is we're going to have to figure out one of two things. Either because homosexuality has absolutely become mainstreamed in the American right as well. So those who believe in that on our side are going to have to figure out, and the burden of proof is on them, frankly, because people like you and me are right about everything. So they're going to have to figure out then how we can draw, like groups like Gays Against Groomers and people like this are going to have to figure out what is the appropriate line to draw between consenting adults and then when we start involving children and redefining the norms of society. And they're going to have to be on the front lines of figuring that out because the burden of proof is on them. Because see, I don't think we can do that. And evidence of what's become of our society since Obergefell and Windsor just verifies that until right now, I'm correct. Maybe there's another way to do this we haven't thought of. By all means, I'm open to it, but you're going to have to submit it. Because I'll also tell you this. If we go back, if we eject homosexuality from the American right again, let me tell you, you're going to have to hire a whole bunch of new congressional staffers in Washington, D.C. I think, folks, you'll be shocked how much of the Washington, D.C. Republican Party is gay.
And not just D.C. Republican,
okay?
Your own state Republican Party.
But in D.C., it's acute. All right? So, but we're going to have this conversation on our own side. Either there's a way to say, as long as you leave the kids alone and you don't try to reorder any of society, then it will be any of our business. I'm very skeptical because of the point of permitting these relationships is to reorder society.
Oh, it is.
But if you can figure out a means to do it, I'm listening. But the burden of proof is on you because the origin of all of this stuff is Obergefell in Windsor. We were not having these conversations prior to this.
There's no doubt. As a matter of fact, if you were in our team meeting, Steve, and this would be frequent team meetings, we would talk about what is the root cause. And the root cause we go back to is marriage and family. And you go back further to the root causes, you're going against God's word, his design, and his truth. So our God's a God of order. He's not a God of chaos. And the more further you get away from his design, the more chaotic you're going to get, the more divisive you're going to get, and the more warped you're going to get. And so we've walked so far away from his design and from his order that you're getting stuff like this. Mm-hmm. We need to have leaders willing to speak out today. What is God's design? What is God's order? Why is marriage and family good for society, good for a community, good for a culture, versus doing the garbage that we're doing here? And so we've talked about this on the life issue. You talk about it on the marriage issue, the raising of children issue. You've got a lot of voices out there right now clamoring to say, you know what, we need to rise to a higher standard. And that higher standard is God's order. Remember, a lot of times these presidential candidates will come into Iowa and they ask us about if, you know, they're giving us their vision for America. They want our endorsement. They want our support. And sometimes, Steve, I'll ask them, you know, what is the purpose of government? Because the purpose of government is not lower taxation. And the purpose of government is not what it is, the pursuit of righteousness and justice. God wants order in a culture, and according to his word, not according to whatever you want to feel. What you just watched on that video is whatever we want to feel. So whatever Steve and I want to feel, that's how we should rewrite the culture. We shouldn't do it. This is even going with John F. Kennedy about don't ask your country what you can do for you, but ask, you know, what can you do for your country?
Aaron, we've got about a minute here. Do you want to respond to what Bob and I were just talking about?
I just think we need to underscore the lack of any sort of disgust, the lack of any sort of even contemplation about what that individual was discussing in that viral video. You're not going to be able to argue your way out of that. There is no philosophical construct that you can present a person like that will convince them that what they are doing is evil. There's only the ability to police that kind of behavior. So that means we never compromise at all. That same lack of disgust, that same lack of even having a second thought about what they're doing, it's the same thing you saw from Mr. Singh on the Florida Turnpike. Just absolutely no regard, a mild annoyance that all of these embryos, human lives, just didn't work out. So we're going to move on to the next one. It's the same thing. This is, and I've said this before, this is a modern, technologically advanced form of human trafficking. We cannot compromise. Obergefell must be overturned. And I just think we need to get that through our heads. There's no marketplacing of ideas our way out of this.
Very well said, Bob. Good to see you again, brother. Thank you.
Good to see you. God bless you guys.
You bet. When we come back, we're going to do an Ask Me Anything, unlike any way we've ever tried to do it before. I'm going to actually choose the questions for the first time, and I'm going to pick them live on the show without ever having seen any of them until now. Stay tuned. We're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Todd Erzin returns tomorrow. Travel day for him, coming back from moving the girls into their various collegiate campuses. Aaron is here, because if there's no Aaron McIntyre, I can't be here. So you know if I'm here, Aaron is here. You can let us know what you think about what we think if you're here by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can attempt, and we mean attempt, to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. Good luck to you. Good journey. As they said in the Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe film. I think it was Courtney Cox that said that, by the way, and I can't believe I just remembered that on a random day in August. I really need to get a life.
My favorite comments on our YouTube channel. Hey, the montage is really great. I wish you would post it on the YouTube channel.
You post it every single day?
Yeah.
This stuff
Very
is
few
nuts.
exceptions.
This stuff, it's just nuts. But I'm gonna get distracted. All right. Back on subject. All right. You can also, please, if you wouldn't mind, if you love the podcast version of the show, Leave us a 5-star review. So many of you have. In fact, tens of thousands of you have. Please keep those coming. We appreciate each and every single one. We'd appreciate it if you would add yours today, too. You can also hit subscribe, or if you're an Apple iTunes, follow, and that's how you'll know for sure that every time we do a new episode, it is there in your podcast feed every single time. And this part of the show brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. You know, medical freedom is not a luxury. It's a right of every single American. But here's the thing about your rights. If you don't ever exercise them, do you really have them? Well, one way you can take advantage of it is to make sure you've got the Jace case from Jace Medical. You've got backups of some of the most important antibiotics ever discovered by humanity, just in case those are the next drugs that, well, they're dangerous now. They're horse paste now. If they're going to do that to drugs they just gave Nobel Prizes to, what do you think they might do to a penicillin or a doxycycline? So make sure you've got backups of those for peace of mind, just in case. Not to mention, how about backups against trade wars when most of our antibiotics are manufactured in countries that hate us at the moment? So there's that. You can also expand your Jace case, too. If you've got certain things that you need, all right, they've got an ever-growing menu of options that you can do add-ons to make sure you've got backups of your meds as well. When you go to jace.com, Jase, jace.com, enter the promo code DACE at checkout. You'll get a discount on your order when you do. Promo code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order at jace.com, Jase.com, promo code DACE for the discount. And now we're going to do this, Aaron, in a way we've never done it before. All right. We've always had either you or Todd in the last couple of years. Sometimes my oldest daughter, Anastasia, select the questions and hit me raw and blindside me with them on the ones that you guys have determined would be best to be answered. I thought for a change with Todd not here, and it may turn out to be lame and terrible, so we'll see what happens. And the good thing about doing it this week is we've only got time for one segment of Ask Me Anything. So if this sucks, John Daniel Davidson's going to return to the show for the first time in more than a year and just drop bombs like he did the last time we had him on, and he rocked my world. So he'll bail us out here at the end of the show, right? But I thought it might be fun for once, because I do kind of like it when you guys pick the questions. But for once, how about I pick them? And I'll pick them live and unseen. On purpose, I've not seen any of these questions so that I wouldn't prime the pump at all. All right? And these questions came from our followers. I hate that term, by the way, but that's the term they use. How about our partners? Partners in culture war, our allies. Let's go with allies. What do you think of allies? I like allies. You like allies, Aaron, better than followers?
Yeah, let's take that back from the rainbow jihad, because they refer to each other as allies.
There you go. So this is from our allies over on X. Let us begin. The JFK report wants to know when our show is going to begin to represent Orthodox Christianity in our conversations. He says, I hear about Catholicism and Protestantism, especially evangelicals referenced, but Orthodox believers like myself also listen and rarely hear our perspectives acknowledged. Well, number one, the reason why you hear a lot of evangelical perspectives, because I'm the host of the show and that's my tribe. And then the guy that produces it, that's his tribe too. So that's 2 out of the 3 guys here. There's fewer than, last I checked, fewer than 400,000 Orthodox church goers in America right now. And so it's really not a view that is very well known by a lot of Americans, experienced by a lot of Americans. And there is a broadcasting aspect of this where we do have to try to reach the widest audience possible. For example, there's about 7 million Mormons in America right now. And there's fewer than 400,000 Greek Orthodox, according to Pew religious research surveys. So, but I'll tell you what, though, Mr. JFK report, if you ever want to opine with something specifically from an Orthodox perspective, capital O in this case, capital O, not small o, but capital O, meaning a specific sect of Christianity. So if you ever want to respond with something from Orthodox sectors that you think would add to the conversation, it's not like, Aaron, we're looking to talk less Christianity around here. So by all means, submit away.
Indeed, as the kids say to the Orthodox members of our audience, I'm not familiar with your game, so by all means, share it.
All right. T. Simons writes, what's your interpretation of James Comey's Taylor Swift video released on Sunday? Well, first of all, Aaron, props to you for not putting that in your montage.
I saw it was 5 minutes and I tapped out immediately. I didn't even watch it.
Thank you very much. I tried because a lot of people I know and like were commenting on it. I had to tap out. here is what I think. And maybe, Aaron, this is aspirational. Maybe it's what I hope. Because if I'm not right, we essentially had a raging sociopath as head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation for several years. So my hope is that wasn't the case, despite the evidence to the contrary. My hope is that wasn't the case. And instead, I have to believe, just like Trump throws out, I'm going to run for a third term, right? Just to rile up the other side, just drop a turd in their punch bowl and then just sit there and watch them overreact, right? User achievement, master troll unlocked, okay? I have to believe, Aaron, that this was his attempt to troll us. Okay? And I have to believe that. And if I don't believe that, I'm going to go to some Vanta Black level places. So I just have to believe that this was an intentional troll, and he is sitting somewhere with the daughter that finally got fired at the Department of Justice, laughing about these gullible reactionary right-wingers falling for the banana in their tailpipe. I have to believe that that's what that was about.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just like you need to believe, and I'd be in that box as well, that former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was making McDonald's runs at 2 a.m.
Yes, things we wanted to believe at the time that turned out to not be true, unfortunately.
Yes, that's where I'm putting this. And any other explanation is I'm just going to ignore. Just going to ignore. Like it's not even there. It's not even happening. Moving on.
DJ Miller, who also goes by Pragmatic Buckeye on X, and I haven't met many of those in my travels, so DJ, call me, okay? But he writes, do you think the odds are more in favor of the arrest of an actual power player from the deep state or the reinstatement of the much maligned FBI whistleblowers? This is a great question, my friend. And let me say from the top, the fact that this has to be asked and it is being drawn upon as any kind of moral equivalency at all is wrong. I mean, just like there's no moral equivalency for I'm against capital punishment, but for abortion. So you're for executing innocent children, but preserving the carcasses and corpses of serial killers. Have you tried having a soul? Maybe. Giving that one a shot. Try it. You might like it. These two things should not be placed on the same line of argumentation. But unfortunately, Mr. DJ, you have a reason for why that is the case. Number one, the FBI whistleblowers should all have been given at least some level of an FBI equivalent to a dishonorable discharge with a commendation for future employment elsewhere in law enforcement. That should have been the bare minimum offered and given to all of these people on day one. And there are simply no good reasons why that's not the case. You cannot possibly convince me that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel have discovered something about people like our friend Steve Friend we did not previously know, that the Biden administration didn't even attempt to prosecute when it had an opportunity to do so. Aaron, do you possibly believe that's true?
No.
I cannot. So then if we can't possibly envision there is something about these guys that our side, quote unquote, finds disagreeable, but yet the Biden administration and its auto pen didn't try to prosecute these guys, then what's the benign, without that, then give me a benign, innocent explanation for why that, at a bare minimum, hasn't happened yet. And there isn't one. And I'm going to keep hammering on this, and I'm going to keep harping on this until it is done. It's completely inexcusable, and it's a good way to make sure other people don't come forward as whistleblowers in the future.
Yes, that's the real danger here.
Yes. If you can't even be rewarded by your own side helps you blacklist you. Kash Patel is aware of who Steve Friend is. Go back and watch our year-end edition of the Deace Group. Go back and watch that, folks, from 2024. Aaron, you remember who one of our guests were on the year-end roundtable?
I'm fuzzy.
It was Steve Friend.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
It was Steve Friend. And Steve Friend gave a special shout out, remember, to Kash Patel, because Kash came forward and helped him, with some financial stuff without a job. As kind of a down payment on, we're going to make it right for you. These guys haven't been given their back pay, nothing. At the very least, give them their back pay and a letter of recommendation for future employment elsewhere in law enforcement. That ought to be the bare minimum. And the fact that we're sitting here on August 18th and it hasn't happened yet is freaking criminal. And Pam Bondi and Kash Patel ought to be ashamed of themselves. Ashamed. And hey, I don't care if we arrest Hillary Clinton, James Clapper, Hillary Clinton, and John Brennan tomorrow as a menage a trois of deep state traitors. I'm going to follow that right up with everything that I just said about Friend and his brethren. In fact, Aaron, I would make the case, tell me if you agree with this, that arresting those deep state traitors actually makes the case even stronger for honoring the FBI whistleblowers, because it just goes to prove they were right and the heroes all along. Inexcusable that it hasn't happened yet. This is from Paul Bullard. What's your reaction to Christians still pushing woke diversity, but in the name of Scripture and instead of DEI? That is, they still make it all about race, and one group still get accused of being against racial diversity and are called racist. I would argue they're just not Christians, frankly. Why do you call me Lord if you do not do what I say? There is absolutely, I don't care if you are, wearing a white hood in the Jim Crow South, or you're in a Brooks Brothers suit as an MSNBC contributor. There is absolutely nothing biblical whatsoever about signaling people out on any basis other than their own character or lack thereof. There's just nothing biblical or Christian about that on really any level. So, I mean, our Lord's apostles were tax collectors, fishermen, people, men who were rejected, passed over by the rest of their generation and were forced into manual labor, or even in the case of Levi or Matthew as a tax collector, essentially being signing on to being an attaché of Roman oppression within his own community. So Christianity blurs, if not outright disrupts, such designations and represents a kingdom of another world. So to define people by the rules of this world, I would argue in and of itself is not even Christian to begin with. Liars, thieves, fornicators, homosexuals, adulterers, murderers. None of these will inherit the kingdom of heaven, but such as once were all of you. So right away, Christianity is a disruption of world systems, paradigms, and caste systems. So to then attempt to shoehorn Christianity into such a caste system or worldly system is in many cases one of the traditional origin points of heresy on a consistent level for thousands of years. So I would just argue at that point they're probably just not Christians, and they're just not in fellowship. Slandering of the brethren, there's nothing Christian about that at all. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. All right, I'm taking this one on purpose from Brad Callahan. Here's my question that you will not answer. Brad, welcome to the show. And he sends me a graphic, number of arrests, Epstein pedophile arrest, COVID, too incompetent to be president, and pardons for Biden's auto pens, election fraud, treason. Reading on everything about some of this is such small writing, I can't understand it, but everything about January 6th insurrection and corruption trials, the Russian collusion hoax, the other stuff. Again, I got to get better glasses. Sorry, Brad.
Is this the table where
Yes.
there's
Yeah, number
different
of arrests.
issues and arrests. Yeah, I've seen.
I mean,
this.
yeah, Brad, I don't disagree with any of that, man. I don't disagree with any of that. I don't know why. Do you understand why Brad thinks we wouldn't?
I was about
ask
to
this?
take this exact submission for buy, sell, or hold, and then I thought we've already addressed this.
Yeah.
Okay. I try to take submissions unless they're funny, but ones that are meant to be serious, I tried to take them for buy, sell, or hold if I think there might be some level of disagreement, but I didn't think there was, so I didn't take it.
I mean, his bonus question is, if they got away with this and the king couldn't be bothered to attempt to do anything about it, what do you suppose they will do next time? I don't know. Maybe try to shoot him. They did that too. You know, maybe try to put him in prison instead. They did that too. I'm really perplexed as to why Brad thinks we wouldn't share this or answer this or discuss it on the show. I mean, I am literally saying, how many times have I said on this show? In fact, this is going to be my next column at the Blaze. It's literally going to be titled "No Perp Walks, No Peace." That's literally what it's titled. Provided the title gets by the editors, that's what I suggested. I mean, Aaron, how many times have I said on this show in the last couple of weeks, if we're not going to deliver on this, we better have a .com level economic boom to satisfy a lot of people who are not going to be satisfied that we didn't deliver on this kind of stuff. I mean, how many more times? I've said this a ton.
Here, let's do something real fun.
Mm-hmm.
All right, for our headlines for both the montage and the main show on YouTube. Friday, who's the most likely to be arrested? And the thumbnail says it's time for consequences. Declassified docs are, this is Thursday's show. Declassified docs are great, but we need perp walks. Thumbnail says arrests now and a picture of somebody in handcuffs. Let's see. Let's go to Wednesday's show. Midterms 2028. Here's the one thing Republicans must prioritize. That has to do with crime and having an actual issue to run on. The social compact is busted. Here's how Trump is trying to fix it. That, again, has to do with these issues. Let's go another one. Bluffs are being called. That's last week. Big trouble. DOJ orders grand jury investigation. So it's not like we're ignoring this. This is the vast majority of what we have been talking about in our headlines, trying to get people's attention just over the last week. The vast majority. What do you want?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I selected this question.
You are no different. You are no. Can I add this as well?
Sure.
Margaret Brennan. So Marco Rubio went through the car wash, I said yesterday morning, of the Sunday morning news programs. And Margaret Brennan, this is not atypical for a lefty reporter. It's going to be a debate. It's not going to be an interview. But again and again, Rubio kept answering her questions, and it wasn't the answer that she wanted. So she just kept answering it. Why won't you answer the question the way that I want you to answer it? It's just going back and forth. It was just absolutely meaningless conversation. And for those of you listening, I used air quotes because it wasn't a conversation. This kind of harkens back to that. What do you want us to say? We're not saying things exactly the way that you would like them to be said. You kind of sound more like Margaret Brennan than a patriot, if you ask me.
I mean, I also I did a 6-month review of the Trump administration a couple weeks ago. What was the category I gave them by far the lowest grade on? This very one we're talking about. So they have not delivered here. This has been a disappointment. There's no question about that. No question about that. I think I've made that rather clear. And Aaron, just thank you for quantifying all of that.
Breaking news, by the way.
Go ahead.
I don't know what that video was earlier. It must have been not the official visit. Zelensky is wearing a suit. Continue on.
Oh. So now we know my man is serious, finally. Okay. Ken Schoonover writes, my church just elected a sweater-vested, whitewashed tomb as its senior pastor by overwhelming majority. Do I kick the dust off my feet and find another church, or stay and be a thorn in the side until he and the congregation starts to wake up? I would say to Ken and people like you in this position, number one, it's one of the reasons why we're starting Sunday Revival here at the Blaze. All right. Almost as a way of helping to supplement the fact that there's too many churches like this. But then number two, if you think the Lord is calling you to be a watchman on the wall, stay. Barring that, you should go. All right? Because you need edifying, and you need encouraging, and you need discipling, and you need accountability, and you need convicting. You need a church. All right. I basically just, what's the church do? The things I just mentioned. Okay. So you need that, brother. So now if the Lord is calling you, and there are times that you will be asked, and given callings to set aside normal protocol in order for a larger point to be made. So if you really feel as if the Lord is calling you to stay there and be a watchman on the wall, stay. Barring that, you should leave. Because that's not good for your spiritual health. All right. The church you should be going there for your own healing. And to be unified with the people that surround you in contending for the faith. Not contending for the faith with the church you're going to. You have any thoughts on that, Aaron?
Well, I will just say this. I like this trend that you've got the last couple of Sundays, asking people on your social media channels what was preached in their churches this morning that challenges them. I'm paraphrasing what you're saying. What's challenged them? What was actually, what they actually learned from church.
Yeah, that they think would encourage or equip other believers. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that accomplishes one of two things. For those who are in the position of, should I go back to church? Should I not? It's kind of the spur that maybe gets them to think, well, I'm not even in church. This doesn't apply to me. Maybe I should get back. And for those who are in a church, it makes them think, especially if they're in the mega church compound thing in the suburbs, like, yes, I'm checking that box. Am I really being equipped here? And for those who actually are going to a church where they are equipped, it makes them ruminate again. So it's accomplishing three things. It makes them ruminate once more on what they heard that morning, not just in one ear, out the other. So I think what you ask now on Sundays, you should keep doing so because it accomplished. I think that's kind of the answer to the question that this person asked.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Let's go here to Cleveland Grover. Why aren't you Catholic? Not asking in an accusatory way, but I'm just curious as to what prevents you becoming part of the Catholic Church. Happy to answer that. There are things about Catholicism I am enamored with, particularly the way I'm wired. The emphasis on missiology, the emphasis on tradition and history, the interaction of the metaphysical, the church as a bridge, the idea that our two realms were divided. The spiritual and material realm were split. They were divided by the sin of Adam and Eve, okay? And they're separated now. And so the church as an eternal transcendent institution, as a thin place, basically, as a mediation point between those places. And I believe that wherever believers are gathered is such a place, but the uniqueness of the tradition and missiology and history of Rome seeing itself as an integral figure in that pantheon, I find appealing. I've never said this publicly before, and I'll say this now because Todd is not here, so he will not use it against me. I actually find the Catholic arguments for the Eucharist more compelling than the Protestant arguments against it. So I've never said that before, and thoughts and prayers to my inbox now that I have. Okay, but I have one major issue with the Catholic Church. I think the Bible is very clear that justification is by faith alone. And given that essentially is the tipping point of the entire Reformation, and I now, I had over the weekend, Aaron, maybe you saw me respond. I had Catholics now trying to use Luther and his views on Mary to reinforce their own. And I'm like, hey, Protestants don't agree on all these things, but be careful using Luther as your source material, because he also, in his 1457 edition of the German New Testament, translated into German, he included illustrations of the Pope, of the Whore of Babylon of Revelation in papal regalia. So I'm not sure when we use Luther as our source and when we don't. Okay, that's why I'm sola scriptura, not sola Luther. But the justification by faith, I think the scriptures are just very clear on that. That justification is by faith alone. And so even though there may be some other places on some other issues where maybe I would be more favorable to Catholicism over Protestantism, but that is a fundamental issue for me. And then I just don't agree that there's never a point in time that we have assurance of salvation, and it's always available and negotiable. I just don't believe the scriptures teach that. And then sola scriptura would be the other one. But I think sola scriptura is more of a hermeneutic that you can derive than a creed or a dogma. And I think that if Catholicism did a better job throughout its history, and this is why I point this out to Todd, and he agrees with me when I bring it up, if Catholicism did a better job of demonstrating that it really was the called officiant of Christianity and Orthodoxy on earth, it would really bruise a lot of the arguments for sola scriptura. There's no coincidence that sola scriptura emerged during a period of time where the Catholic Church was essentially off the rails. That's what launched the Reformation. Was it Takel going around Europe? Hey, if you give money, if you're a widow and you give money, for the refitting of St. Peter's Basilica, then you can buy your loved one who was lost in the Crusades or to the plagues. You can buy him out of purgatory with the papal dispensation. The church was just really off the rails during this period of time. So it's no coincidence that in reaction to the church demonstrating its lack of expressed moral authority, that reformers looked to another or higher form of authority to take the place of a church that abrogated much of its authority. And they decided that that was the scriptures. Your thoughts on my answers there, Aaron? Feel free to...
Yeah, that's the sticking point as well for me, is to me it seems pretty, and it's not just to me, because that's going to be something that, Catholics will say, well, you're your own pope. That's something that church leaders since the Reformation have come to the conclusion on. And again, it's not sola scriptura. We don't believe that there is no need for teaching or catechesis. Okay, but it's not. But eventually, everything is rooted in the truth of Scripture. Mm-hmm. The other thing I appreciate about Catholicism, especially in this contemporary day and age, is from my vantage point, it seems like by and large, there's that for the day. By and large, the church as a whole, I'm sure there's pockets where this is not true, takes a much longer view of history than evangelicalism, which is basically Protestantism as it pertains to the American context. I think that's very helpful for having patience and trusting in God to work all things together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purposes. So that's one other thing I appreciate about the Catholic Church, but the sticking point for me is the same as it is for you.
All right, we're going to have a few more of these in bonus Ask Me Anything in overtime, but John Daniel Davidson is next. Hey folks, I realize there are many choices that you could choose when it comes to your mobile phone service, including, by the way, and that's a good thing I think overall, is we're seeing a growing amount of people now enter into the red parallel economy space, and even in the mobile phone industry. But that's also a great moment to remember the OGs in this space, our friends over at Patriot Mobile. They have been leading the way here from the very beginning. They outgain the competition even when it comes to technology. They're one of the only carriers out there that gives you access to all three major U.S. networks, and you can switch anytime you want within their main hub if you're a member. They also offer unlimited data plans, mobile hotspots, international roaming, internet backup, so much more. Switching is easier than ever. Keep your number, switch your number, keep your phone, upgrade your phone. You can do that in minutes from the comfort of your own home right now. And they'll give you a free month of service to get you started as well when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve and use the promo code Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve and use the promo code Steve to get started with a free month of service from our friends at patriotmobile.com/Steve using the promo code Steve. Well, last year, and anytime we have a presidential election year, we're going to have next level lineups of guests. Everybody wants to get on shows like this in a presidential election year. But there was one interview that we did last year from a gentleman that I had previously not heard of until his book came out. And it absolutely rocked my world. I can't tell you. I hope we sold him some books, because I cannot tell you how many times this interview got referenced throughout the rest of this year. I think that it was in March of last year. And over the next 9 months, we referenced this guy's interview in his book many times. He's a senior editor over at The Federalist. John Daniel Davidson makes his return to the show. John, it's good to have you back, man. How are you?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me, Steve.
And what you said on our show, because I've been using kind of revival or bust as a mantra on my program, John, for well over a decade. And when you see things like CDC reporting, we hit another new all-time low in birth rates in America here as of this morning. Again, we need elections to stymie the generational damage that's been inflicted and that we're suffering through. But ultimately, there's a divine kind. We're at a point now, only the divine kind of election is going to get us ultimately out of this, in my view. And so I asked you, what does bust look like? And this is what your book, Pagan America, talked about. That when we say bust, I think people mean like ash heap of history, zombie apocalypse. There's no more country on the globe that says United States of America anymore. And your point was, oh no, it'll just become evil, like what you're already seeing happen in Western Europe. So we're 6+ months now into the Trump administration version 2.0, year one. How are we doing in thwarting that happening? What do you think?
Yeah, I think when I came on your show, we were some months out from the presidential election. And of course, that was on everybody's mind. And so I remember the subject came up of, well, what if Trump wins? What if we can turn this thing around? And this is a point I address in the book that, an election cycle, a presidential election, a congressional majority, a majority on the Supreme Court, unreliable majority on the Supreme Court is not going to reverse this trend, because this trend has been centuries in the making. It's been multiple generations, and it's going to take multiple generations to get out of it. I think what happened with Trump's victory in November of last year is that we bought ourselves some time in the short term, politically and culturally, but the underlying dynamics are the same. Whether you're talking about, as you mentioned, birth rates, the decline of Christianity in among the people, especially you see this in Europe, more so the United States, and the broader trends in our civilization and the de-Christianization of the West. That hasn't changed just because Trump won the election, but Trump winning the election gives us a little bit of room to fight back, to make our case, and there are some reasons for hope. But before we talk about the reasons for hope, we should be clear that what lies ahead for the West is a war. It's a war over what the West will become. Will we return to some sort of Christendom? Will we have revival, or as I like to say, a reconversion of the West? Or will we become some kind of neo-pagan, neo-Gnostic, post-Christian entity that is not weak, is not gone, but as I said before, just becomes evil?
John, I'm a child of the 80s, Gen Xer, 52. And I mean, I literally thought "We're America, bitch" was like our foreign policy, like the first 40 years of my life. Okay. I mean, I just, I didn't think Team America World Police was a parody. I thought that's actually a pretty good idea. Okay. I mean, because I think we're the shining city on a hill. I grew up in, I read all the Milton Friedman, William F. Buckley, Russell Kirk. I mean, I was marinated in this, And so for me to say what I said at the start of this show, I think I want to reset that so people can see how much ground I think we have lost and how close we are to the brink you just described, that I can open my show today and say, I honestly do not know who the good guy is between Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. And that I really think Zelensky is just the JV Putin. And I think he'd do all the same things about Putin we don't like if he could. He's just limited by by the traditions he still has to at least wink and nod to and adhere to. He wants to tell us his constitution says he can't trade land for peace, but apparently it says he can suspend elections indefinitely whenever he wants. I'm way more threatened. I cannot stand Putin. I think he's a thug. I'm way more threatened by Brussels and Davos on a daily basis than I am Moscow, right? And at this point, I don't care who runs Kiev. I don't care who controls Ukraine. We already spent way too much time and energy on it. And that's a Habsburg dynasty pissing match between Davos and Brussels and Soros and Vladimir Putin and not my issue. For me to say this as a kid of the 80s who grew up in the shadow of the Cold War, and the only reason I watched the Olympics was to root against the Soviet Union and to be a jingoist, I think that should just be indicative of how much I think we have lost the West in general. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. More a child of the 90s than the 80s myself, but to your point, the Cold War was a specific time and place, and when it ended, I think something happened that where a lot of people are only now kind of realizing that, and that is the elites in the West who, flush with victory over the Soviet Union, hatched these great ideas that they were going to unleash global trade and these multinational corporations and these multinational governing bodies, and they were going to control everything. And they were going to impose their ideology through corporatism, through collective trade deals, through open borders. And they were going to they had all these schemes for all of us, whether we consented to them or not. And I think one of the things that we've all realized over the last 30 years or so is that the elites are the bad guys. Our elites in the West are bad guys. The Davos set, the Washington establishment, as they say online, gay race communism that's being foisted on us constantly by people who are supposed to be on our side. And so I think it's perfectly natural and totally justified for us to take a step back and say, let's forget about figuring out who's the good guy and who's the bad guy in Ukraine versus Russia, or really caring that much about that specific conflict. Let's look at what's happening to our own societies and who's doing it. When you look at Europe, which is in much worse shape than the United States on the civilizational front, their elites have allied with an immigrant Muslim population that wants to completely Islamify Europe, and they're going about it at an alarming pace. We have a different set of problems here, but your point is totally valid. We need to look at what our own elites have done to us since the Cold War ended.
You mentioned this last election bought us some time. I think we will run out of time, John, to do what needs to be done multi-generationally, as you articulated, unless we can restore mutually assured destruction. And I think the culture war in America is very much like where the Cold War was when I was a little kid. After a decade plus of subservience and weakness before the Soviet Union, there were enough crazies in the Kremlin who were beginning to think they could win a nuclear war. And that's really why Reagan did the arms race. It was to create a mutual assured destruction deterrent, to say to them, don't push the button, we'll push it too, nobody wins. You want to talk about the ultimate Pyrrhic victory? Congratulations. You are now the empire of a radioactive anthill. Good luck with that. All right. And that was essentially the point, to create a deterrent so that they would not push the button over there. And I think what we've seen in our Cold War is the other side has decided that the social compact is completely broken. We share nothing in common with John Daniel Davidson and Steve Deace and their followers and readers and audiences and allies other than a landmass. And so we're going to behave accordingly. And we're still having this argument over here about, dots and tittles and spirit ofs and traditions and legacies and unwritten rules and everything else. And to me, if we don't see arrests and prosecutions of people, like I don't want to see any more Kash Patel releases of, hey, here's what we're putting out there. Dude, arrest somebody then. You're the head of the freaking FBI. Then arrest somebody or leave me alone. Because if we don't do that, John, if we don't have a mutually assured destruction deterrent, then we are literally in a position that every single election, every basic civil right from people like us is up for grabs every single time. They'll just do whatever they want to do. We won't cause them to, we're always the side that thinks, well, if we do this, what will they do to us? They're already doing it, okay? We want to make them start thinking that, John, because if we have one side that gets to go to DEFCON 1 and 2 whenever they want, and then the other side is paranoid to even go to DEFCON 3, we're out of time, John. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It's a good way of putting it. We are in a situation where we're being asked essentially not to fight back because we're the party of, or we're the side of principles and constitutional order and restraint, where, the opposition, the left in this country, understands only the language of power. They only understand the language of consequences, and we see what they do when they get into power. Everything, as you say, is up for grabs. And then when we get into power, we're asked to have restraint and be moderate and pull back. And I think what that does, bully, right? Weakness encourages aggression. And since the only language they understand is power, then power and the hard hand of power is what they should get. And this is, this doesn't just go to politics. This is a cultural issue now. Lines of demarcation.
Do we lose John? Let's try to reconnect, because anytime someone begins a sentence with lines of demarcation, something good is about to follow. And I want to make sure he gets to make that point. Aaron, let me know when you've got John back and lined up there. And apologize, his video was going out before the audio. That's why you guys just saw me for a long time while John was talking. But again, if you cannot have e pluribus unum is gone. The other side does not want anymore. Out of many, one. They don't want that. That is gone. And you can continue to cling to that, just like I could continue to cling to my Cold War era that I was weaned in, notions of the world, or I can live in the world as it actually is today. And that's the difference. To me, that's the difference between nostalgia and tradition. Tradition it represents the eternal values that, in your own way, given the times in which you live, you are seeking to conserve and preserve for what's good, true, and beautiful for the human condition. Nostalgia paralyzes you into thinking that you have to go back to the exact circumstances that you remembered them best. That's a paralyzing force. But if we cannot, so e pluribus unum is gone. The other side doesn't want it. You can't have out of one many when the other side says no. So then what's the chasm? What's the neutral space then between that and just civil war? A place where there's mutually assured destruction. A place where both sides recognize if they do certain things, and the key is both sides. If they do certain things, there will be hell to pay. So don't do them. And that is frankly probably the best that we're going to be able to do in the era in which we live. All right, we're just going to have to move on. We'll get a hold of John and apologize for that. Dang it. Because anytime someone starts a sentence with lines of demarcation, what was coming next was really good. But, Aaron, without mutually assured destruction, we're out of time. Because they're not going to stop themselves over there, so we're going to have to show them that we will stop them if they won't stop themselves.
Mutually assured destruction. So when did that phrase come to the common vernacular? It was during the Cold War, right?
Correct.
What were we talking about when it came to mutually assured destruction? We were talking about nuclear weapons. Or another way of putting that is power. What you just laid out is just another way of saying you have to have people who agree with you, who believe the same things you do, actually have conviction, courage of conviction, to attain and wield power. You have to have that. You have to understand that in a pagan world, and I want to tie this into what we talked with Bob Vander Plaats about last hour, that in a pagan world, there is no modernized notion of marketplace of ideas. We're just going to have all of the best ideas or worst ideas. We're going to throw them all together, and whatever comes out is what we're going with, and that's probably going to be the best thing. There is no such thing as that in this day and age, I have to believe. And just tying that back to the video that went viral over the weekend of just the cool, calm, collected, gay, homosexual, whatever you want to call it.
Gay race communist.
Yes, gay race communist. Just ticking off the sticky notes. There's another life gone. There's another baby murdered. There's another baby murdered. There's another baby murdered. As he just waxes eloquence about IVF. You get to a point where people feel comfortable, even feel vindicated, even feel emboldened to make videos like that in polite society by hundreds of years of getting to the point where we are here. I believe John is a Catholic. This is what I was talking about end of last segment. What I even though I'm evangelical, what I appreciate about Catholicism or the Catholic Church is the long view of history, because that informs not only the past but also the future and what it's going to take to get to a place where we are no longer being invaded by, the Islamists, okay, where we're no longer being threatened by the gay race communists. It's going to take hundreds of years. So we have to get that through our skull. History doesn't operate on 2, 4, 6-year political cycles like we have been accustomed to in this country. But the only reason why you got to a point in this civilization where somebody like what we saw last hour feels like they are not only emboldened but celebrated to talk openly about how they are having a baby via basically another highly technical form, high technological form of human trafficking via IVF, and just feels comfortable ticking off that embryo's gone, is through hundreds of years of going down the rabbit hole. And it's only going to take hundreds of years to go back up that.
I mean, we're 200 years post-Darwin, which is really the genesis of much of this, pun intended. Exactly. And here's how we won't have hundreds of years to undo hundreds of years of damage if we don't install mutually assured destruction. We won't have that time. We'll be out of time. Going to stick around and do more time, overtime for subscribers for the rest of you. We'll see you tomorrow with a full crew. Until then, Romans 8:28.